welcome to Crime Divers. I'm Laura.
And I'm Jill.
And welcome to the first episode of Season 9.
Hello everybody, we're back yet again for another season.
Yes, here we are, back again for some more true crime.
Hope everybody's been okay while we've been away, because we have had quite a few weeks off.
Yes, I went on holiday.
And I had a break.
Yeah, pretty much. You looked after my dog.
I had a break from our last our mini series was that Shelley No Tech, and
yes.
I really needed a good long break after that.
You did well with that one, to be fair, and you deserved your break. So
yes, but we're back. We're refreshed with our new season. Couldn't say it properly there.
Nothing changes. We can't talk still.
No, I still can't talk. So, before we start, I would like to say thank you to our latest Patreon supporter, and that's Cresta. So thank you very much, Cresta.
Yes, thank you very much for your support. It's much appreciated, as everybody else's that still supports the show.
Yep, so thank you, obviously, of course, to everybody else who is a Patreon supporter. And if anybody else would like to join them, it's patreon.com/CrimeDivers, and there must be... there must be at least about 60 episodes, maybe more than
There's
that.
a lot of episodes, and then depending on the tier, if you're on the highest tier, you also get our mystery series, our mysterious series.
Yeah, those are like
unsolved,
mysterious, unsolved,
yeah, that sort of thing.
So, yeah, if anybody would like to join us and get a whole load of back episodes, a back catalogue of episodes, bonus episodes, then there'll be, as Laura said, depending on the tier, you can either get 1 or 2 bonus episodes every month.
Absolutely.
And you'll get early access.
And there is some good ones on there.
Yeah, there is, especially the mysterious ones. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. We've had a few ones of those that they've been really interesting. So yeah.
And we get so frustrated, don't we?
We do, but we have to tell the stories, so that's part of it. But anyway, shall we get cracking with this series? So where in the world are we?
We are in the UK.
And your title?
Murder in the Garden.
Ooh, okay. Shall we dive in?
Let's dive in. So in 2018, so this is clearly recent. Although I was like, this is like really recent, but then I was like, actually, that was 6 years ago.
I know, because 2018 seems like it should be recent, but we're actually halfway through 2024 already. So yeah, it is a little bit...
it's fairly recent.
Yeah, we'll call it fairly recent.
So in 2018, Jennifer Cronin was 72 years old. She lived alone in a village called Banfleet, which is in Essex in England. Her husband had died the year before, and she had a daughter called Susan. I think she did have other kids, but this case centres around Susan and her family. So I don't know about the rest of the family. Yeah. So Susan had met a guy called Kieran Lynch when she was about 17 or 18. He was 3 years older than her, and he was a bricklayer, and she was a trainee hairdresser at the time.
Okay.
They started a relationship, they fell in love. Kieran treated Susan really well. He was a nice guy. Her friends and her family loved him and thought that he would make the perfect husband. So they got married and later went on to have 2 daughters, Molly and Matilda. So the girls adored their grandma, Jennifer. They would see her a couple of times a week, and they were a really close family. Kieran had a great relationship with his mother-in-law, and according to his kids, he was a great dad as well. Matilda said that her dad was very generous. He would play with them, he would make them laugh, and he doted on his daughters. But his wife Susan said that he was a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde character. He had to be the best at everything, and he was one of these people who think that they should be congratulated and told how amazing they are just for doing a bit of housework.
Oh, I hate those kind of people.
I know. Like, I did the hoovering for you, and it's like, you didn't do it for me.
No, we did it for all of us.
You did it for the house, for the family.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, what do you want? A Blue Peter badge? For anybody doesn't know what Blue Peter is, it's a TV series that used to be on after school, right?
Yeah.
And they used to give out
Blue Peter badges
for, like, I don't know, just good things that they did, or like kids would come on it, or if people did something like really good in the community or something like that.
Something like that.
You'd get a Blue Peter badge, and it was quite a big thing if you got a Blue Peter badge, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. So if we say that now, then it means like that you've done a really good thing. So it's like it's like saying to somebody, "Oh, what do you want? A gold star or a gold medal? Like, do you want a Blue Peter badge?" Yeah. So yeah, he was one of them. He was a bit of a control freak, and he wanted everyone to think that he had the perfect marriage and the perfect family. He would work hard, and he would say that he had to work so much because he had to keep up with the girls' lifestyles and to be able to give them the things they wanted. And he would tell anyone who listened how he would provide for them all the time. But as others said, he didn't have to do that. He put that on himself. It wasn't the kids expecting that. It was, they were happy with whatever they got. He was putting the strain on himself.
Right.
And of course everybody wants the best for their children.
Yeah,
but as I said, it wasn't them that was sort of putting the pressure on.
At the end of the day, they would, I think they would rather have like the love and like the spending the time and, like all the material stuff. It's nice along the way, but it ain't the be all and end all, is it? I mean, it's definitely not the most important thing.
Yeah. So Susan said that he didn't cope well with stress. He found it hard to express himself, so he would end up losing his temper. And he would throw things and break things when this happened. Susan didn't think much of it at the time. That's just the way he was. She was that used to it, and that was the way that he dealt with things. She was like, oh, he's in a mood again, just whatever, just leave him alone and he'll be fine. But unfortunately, over time, he got worse, and the arguments would get more aggressive, and his reactions would get worse. So, like, daughter Matilda said that she would hear them, like, shouting and screaming, like, plates being smashed. And her and her sister would like sit at the top of the stairs listening, so you can imagine how scary that must have been for them. And it was mostly when Kieran had a drink that the arguments would start.
That seems to always be a common denominator in a lot of these things, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. And he started like putting his hands on Susan. So at first it was maybe a poke or a push, but over time it gradually. I mean, that's bad enough, but it got worse. Like doing things like pushing her down, sitting on her chest, like pushing onto her throat. Once he had sobered up, he would always apologise, of course.
Yeah.
But he would always make up an excuse as to why it happened. Like, he couldn't just be like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it. It was always like, well, I did it because of this, or I did it because of that. There's always an excuse.
Yeah.
Susan was embarrassed. She said that she was embarrassed that she had let that happen to her. So she never really said anything to anyone. She never told her mum. She never reported to the police. She said she just accepted it. So you can understand why everybody else they didn't know what was going on. They thought he was this great guy, he treated her right.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it?
But I mean, behind closed doors.
Yeah, relationships can look great on the outside if people want them to look great, but you don't know it wasn't behind closed doors, really. So
yeah, so other people didn't know. But by 2015, other people started to notice a difference in Kieran. He was building an extension in one of her friends' houses, and she said that she noticed that he just was being a bit off. He didn't look well. His face was all drawn in. He'd lost a lot of weight. Some days he didn't turn up to work.
Right.
And like he would like, oh, I've got other work on, but it's like, well, she's paying you to do your job, so that is unprofessional.
Surely you do the job that you're. That's your current job at the time, and you have other jobs scheduled for after you finished a job. Surely you wouldn't be doing multiple jobs, being a bricklayer, especially.
Well, I mean, I could understand if they was doing it on the side, but like, she would have been paid. You can't give somebody an extension for free.
No,
it's not. Maybe makers rates or something, but
yeah, exactly. But let's say, I mean, you still think that
she's paying for a service. So anyway, Kieran and Susan had a joint credit card, but they only used it for like big purchases, like maybe, I don't know, like a couch or a TV or something like that. They wouldn't just like use it for random bits and pieces.
Not just like day-to-day living.
Yeah, but Susan opened a statement one day and he had racked up £3,000 on it. But it was like cash withdrawal, so she couldn't see what he was spending the money on. Of course, Susan asked him, but he got all like defensive and aggressive and just stormed out the house. Some days he was fine, but other days the family would be walking on eggshells around him, not knowing what could like push him over the edge. But one day Susan was doing some washing and she picked up Kieran's work jeans and a little cut up straw fell out of his pocket. So of course she was like, what the hell is that? So she put her hands in the other pockets and she found a packet of cocaine.
Oh, right, okay.
So when she confronted him, she realised that he was addicted to cocaine. So that's what was the change in his behaviour.
Yeah, the change in his look as well.
Yeah, and he was drinking as well, so that dangerous combination.
Absolutely.
So Susan said that was the start of when things really started to go wrong. She said there was one time when it was just the two of them in the house and he got really angry about something. And he grabbed a kitchen knife and he like put it to her throat, and he just held it there and told them that they would die together. He would just end it for them both there and then. She would go first and then he would kill himself. Of course she was terrified, but eventually like he sort of calmed down and put the knife away. So after that, Susan was like, right, nah, I have to get away. We've got two daughters.
Yeah.
need to protect him.
Absolutely.
So after 24 years of marriage, she told him it was over, and Kieran went to live with his parents. Mm-hmm. So Susan and the kids breathed a sigh of relief. Like they didn't have to be like in their own home walking on eggshells. They could relax. There was no arguing and fighting. They were much happier without Kieran being there. Susan would start going out a bit more, seeing her friends, and about a year after the split, she started going out with a guy called Mike. So Mike was the complete opposite of Kieran. She told him about her marriage, and he was supportive and was happy just to go at her pace in the relationship. He didn't drink, didn't take drugs. He was kind and gentle at all times. Yeah. So they fell in love, and Susan wanted a clean slate with Mike, so that meant she needed to get a divorce from Kieran. So as you can imagine, she was really scared to tell him that she had moved on, even though this is a year later. Yeah. Well, more than a year later, because she met Mike a year later. So by the time she was actually telling him, it was more than a year later.
Which, is fair enough.
Yeah, that's plenty of time.
Quite right to move on at the end of the day.
Yeah, but she knew that she had to do it. So she texted him one day and asked him to meet her at McDonald's at 6:30 p.m. as she thought it would be safer to do it in a public place. So she was actually pleasantly surprised, though, when Kieran took the news well. He was fine. Like, they had like a perfectly amicable conversation. He said he was happy for her, and that was that. So he texted her later on saying that he was glad that she had found someone else, and she replied saying that she hoped that he would find happiness too. So all was good.
Which is hopefully how you would think it would have turned out.
Yeah. So as I said, all was good until the following day.
Oh.
So that didn't last long, no. The 11th of January 2018, Kieran sent Susan a message saying, quote, "I don't care what you do, it's your life, who am I to say? Give me 60 grand and I've gone from your life for good, okay." And she was like, well, right, well, what about the kids? Like, are you still going to see them? Are you going to pay child support? Yeah. And he replied, "What? And pay for some cunt to sleep in my house? I have nothing. You have it fucking all. Sorry, but I'd rather have you killed." End quote.
Lovely.
So then one night soon after that, Susan actually called the police and told them that her ex-husband was outside her house and was threatening to break in. He had messaged her telling him that he was outside, and she sort of looked out the window and she could see that he was getting something out of his boot. She then told the operator that he had a big sledgehammer in his hand. She was terrified that he was going to smash the door or the windows in, and she was like begging for them to send help. And he started like smashing all the plant pots outside in the garden. So the operator told Susan to go and lock herself in the bathroom till they could get help. And Susan was like, "Well, I can't. There's no lock. There isn't a lock on the bathroom door."
Oh, wow.
So the operator was like, "Well, is there another room you can lock yourself in?" And Susan's like, "No, I've got kids. I don't have any locks on the doors of my house. I mean, I don't know why you haven't got one in your bathroom, but
but I thought that was just standard.
That's standard.
But
although we didn't have a lock on our bathroom door for years. No. So that's why when I was having a bath, the kids would just say, "I'm coming in for a pee." Great.
I've always had, in any house I've lived in, there's always been a lock on the...
Well, funnily enough, I've got a lock on my door now that there's only the two of us, and we never even shut the door. The door's always open. Never mind. Yeah, she didn't have any locks. But luckily the kids weren't in the house at the time.
Right.
So she just had to worry about herself rather than the kids. So the operator told her that she was trying to get a unit allocated to her. Susan was crying and begging him to hurry up before he broke in. And luckily the police got there before he did. If that's what he was planning to do. I mean, he might not have been planning on breaking in. He was maybe just trying to scare her by being outside.
But at least they got there before.
Yeah, but she must have been absolutely terrified.
I would be, absolutely.
So the police arrested Kieran, and he was heard saying that he wanted Susan dead. He was arrested for criminal damage, possession of an offensive weapon, and making threats to kill. So the Crown Prosecution Service thought that criminal damage was a more appropriate charge. Susan had proof on her phone that Kieran said he would rather have her killed, like I said earlier, but they argued that could have been hypothetical. That wasn't a direct threat. So that's why he didn't get charged with making threats to kill.
Right.
And the being in possession of an offensive weapon, they argued that Kieran was a builder, so of course he was going to have a hammer in his car.
Yeah, but if you're going to use it violently and you're smashing up shit, I mean, that becomes an offensive weapon.
Of course it does.
Because at the end of the day, anybody could have a hammer and a sledgehammer or just whatever. Like, and you know, I could have it in my garage. I can have a hammer and be in possession. But if I use that to be violent towards anything, it becomes an offensive weapon, doesn't it?
Of course it does. So he didn't have any previous convictions, and they just saw it as a domestic breakup, and obviously didn't take that seriously for whatever reason. So Kieran was released with conditions not to have contact with Susan and not to go into the street where she lived. 12 hours after he was released, he called the police. The operator asked what his emergency was, and Kieran was like stuttering, and he sounded like he really didn't know what to say, and he was like, "Oh, you know, this is an odd request, but I'm at my wit's end. I really don't know where I am or what to do." And the operator was like, "Are you lost?" And he was like, "No, I'm not lost." He kind of laughed and went, "No, I'm not lost. I'm like just lost in life." He went on to say that he had been arrested for the first time in his life for criminal damage and things that he'd done for an acrimonious divorce. The operator asked if he'd done anything to himself, and Kieran was crying, and he said he'd tried to kill himself. He said he'd driven to a place that he knew quite well and tried to put a plastic bag over his head, and he just couldn't take it.
Right.
So he then hung up, but he had told the operator where he was, so they sent an officer and a mental health team to go and talk to him. They assessed him, and he was responsive in his answers, and he gave no indication that he wanted to kill himself at that point.
Right.
He told them that he was absolutely fine at that moment. He'd had a wobble, but he was okay now. So they just were like, right, okay, well, just get in contact with your doctor. Okay. And they didn't feel that there was a need for any other medical care in terms of his mental health, because he wasn't, right now, I want to kill myself. He was like, right, okay, I had a wobble. Right. No, I'm fine. I've calmed down. Yes, I'll go and see my doctor. So there was nothing they could do.
No, I guess not.
So even though his bail conditions were not to contact Susan, he still kept trying to phone her, and she was scared that he would turn up at the house again. Kieran started spreading rumours that Mike, Susan's partner, was sending him text messages saying things like, "I'm breaking bedposts with your ex-wife." Okay. Like, he wasn't. And what a weird thing to say, "I'm breaking bedposts." Like, I know what it means, but...
Yeah, I know what it means as well.
Oh, Cam, do you know about if you're breaking the bedposts?
Well, exactly. Jesus. Why would you want to send that to the ex-husband?
It wasn't. Obviously, he was saying that he was doing that to taunt him, but it wasn't.
No.
Kieran texts Matilda, his daughter, one day with a series of letters and numbers. And Matilda just texts back with a question mark, like, what the hell? And he replied, "Mum's boyfriend's reg," as in car, registration plate.
Right.
"Thanks." So he went, Mum's boyfriend's reg, thanks. And she was like, "Well, why are you texting it to me?" And he was like, he needs to speak with me, okay? Tell her and her boyfriend. And Matilda was just like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Like, she didn't understand what the registration plate had to do with anything. And she was just confused, wondering what her dad was up to. It was weird. I don't know what that was all about.
I'm assuming she didn't give the registration plate to him.
No, he gave it to her. That's what the numbers were.
Oh, right.
He texted Matilda one day with the registration plate. So she was like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "It's your mum's boyfriend's registration." But I don't know why. Yeah. That was weird.
That is very weird.
Sorry. Kieran was sending Susan messages asking her, like, have you forgotten about giving him money? Remember he asked for 60 grand?
Oh, yes.
Saying things like, "You and the girls have everything. I will always have my memories. Thanks for everything. A true lady. Enjoy." Okay. Susan said, like, he was just making things up in his head, like living in his own little world. Sometimes he would send up to 100 messages in a day, and he'd be phoning her constantly, and like he would sit outside in his van sometimes as well.
But he's not meant to be there.
I know. He's breaking the bail conditions.
Harassment, that is.
So she was fed up with him phoning and messaging, so she phoned the police and told them that he had broken his bail conditions and that she was concerned about his state of mind. She told the operator that she was scared that he might harm himself or his daughters, because he was saying they had nothing, there was nothing here for him anymore, and he had already threatened to kill her. So she told the police that she was frightened of Kieran and that she didn't think he was mentally stable. And that wasn't the only time she called the police. She would call up and explain everything that he'd done to her in the past. And again, like, tell him that he'd threatened to kill her and that she was frightened of him. And she would say, like, I've already told the police this. And she was met with things like, oh, well, I wasn't in that day. Like, it should all be on record there. Like, it doesn't matter who was on that day. You should be able to look it up on the computer and it should be a record
exactly. Familiarise yourself with what it is.
Yeah, so, and they said, oh, well, we've got a copy of his bail conditions, we will be taking action. But to Susan and her friends and her family, it was like she just wasn't being taken seriously and they just weren't doing anything to help.
Yeah.
One day, Susan's mum, Jennifer, phoned and asked her if she had been in her garden to top the pond up because she, I'm not sure if she'd been out and come in or if it was in the morning or something, but anyway, she'd realised that her hose had been left out.
Right.
And so she was like, well, it wasn't me. Has Susan been round? And Susan was like, no, I haven't been round. So she was like, it must have been Kieran, just to torment them, just to let them know that he was around, that he could come to their house at any time. Like, so on the 7th of March 2018, 2 weeks before Kieran's hearing for the criminal damage charge, Mike phoned Susan when she was at work. He told her that Kieran's van was parked outside and he could see someone going into the garage. Mike went upstairs to look out the bedroom window and he could see it was Kieran, and he said it was just spooky, like, and he was scared. He was like standing behind the curtain not knowing what Kieran was, what's he doing? Why is he in the garage? What is he doing?
Does he have a key in the garage? I mean, really, shouldn't he have been in?
Like, well, I don't know if he had a key or if it was open. I don't know. But then the lights just went off. So basically, Kieran had went into the garage, switched all the electrics off in the house, and then just got back in his van and drove off. So you can see why they were worried about his mental state, because what the hell are you doing that for?
Well, exactly. Like, they just think he was being funny, but he obviously didn't realise that Mike was in the house then. Did he? So.
Well, I don't know. Did he?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know if he knew who was in the house. So again, Susan called the police, but no one knew where Kieran was. Like, she couldn't understand why they couldn't just go and find him and just do something. Like, he was calling constantly. She never knew when he might turn up at the house. Her children were terrified of their own dad. Her mum was scared after, being at her house with the hose thing, and no one knew what he was capable of. But the police said that, like, later, they said that they have so many calls coming in and they assess every one of them, but because there had been no direct threats from Kieran and no indication from him that he was going to be turning up at Susan's house, so they saw that as not particularly risky towards Susan or anyone else, so they didn't deploy staff at that point. A spokesperson for the police said, quote, I would say in hindsight that we didn't identify what this was. That fixation, that's obsessive, it's unwanted, it's repeated, this was stalking. Stalking can be one of those offences that can be hidden amongst a variety of circumstances. However, at that time, we didn't realise that he was demonstrating a course of behaviour that would cause us as a police force to be concerned, end quote. So they just didn't see him as a threat, even though she was telling them everything that was going on.
I mean,
I don't know. So on the 12th of March 2018, the house phone rang at Susan's house and Molly answered it. It was Kieran, and she was like, Dad, the police are out looking for you. And he just laughed and said to her, I'm going to fuck you up. This is his daughter.
Wow, to your actual daughter?
Jeez, oh. This was the first time he threatened said anything like that to either of his daughters. And for Susan to hear him say those words to his own daughter, she was horrified and scared. Molly called the police this time and she said, my dad keeps on threatening that he's going to come at the house. He's ringing the phone, he's harassing us all the time. The operator said, well, what did your dad say he was going to do? And Molly replied, he's going to fuck us up. He said he's going to kill us. He's told my mum he's going to kill her. He's harassing my nan. My nan's elderly. He's like breathing down the phone to her. We've already reported it, but he's not been arrested, but he keeps on coming to our house. So his information was put as wanted on the police national computer. They went to his home address to arrest him, but he wasn't there. The police told the girls that they shouldn't be at the house that night. So Matilda went to stay at her friend's house and Molly went to stay at her nan Jennifer's.
Right.
So Molly and Susan was at home with Mike.
Right.
So Molly said that when her and Nan Jennifer went to bed, as soon as they put the lights off, the phone started ringing, the house phone started ringing. It's like sitting out a scary movie, isn't it?
So it was like somebody was watching the house, and as soon as they've seen lights go off,
the phone started ringing, and it just kept going on and on and on. And the only time it would stop was when the phone at Susan's house was ringing. So Kieran must have been ringing one, and then hanging up, and then ringing the other, and just constantly just ringing phones. Wow. Like, how creepy is that?
It is. I mean, I don't know about you, but I would have went and unplugged it.
Well, yeah. About 1:50 a.m, Susan called the police and told them that her ex-husband was constantly calling her house, and also her mum's house as well, where her daughter was staying, and that there was a warrant out for his arrest. She told them that every time, she'd said to the police, like, she's like, every time I speak to you, you're telling me that you're looking for him, but you're still not arrested him. Mm. Like, and she said, she's like, I'm more worried about my mum and daughter because they're two women in the house by themselves. Like, she had Mike, so she wasn't as worried. You know, she obviously felt a bit protected by having Mike. But her mum was 72, and her daughter, I'm not sure how old her daughter was, maybe like sort of late teens or something like that. But you know, they were alone in the house. So Molly, she also called the police. She phoned them at 2:18 and told them that her dad was constantly ringing the phone at her nan's house. She said she was absolutely petrified, as her nan's house was quite big, and for all they knew, he could be in the house, that and they wouldn't hear him. Like, she didn't know, and they were terrified. So I think they like locked themselves in the bedroom because they were that scared. And the operator asked if Kieran had left any voicemails. Molly told her that he had said that he was going to. Kieran said that he was going to be joining my granddad soon. And the granddad died the year before. And that, and she'd said that, you know, like, my granddad died last year, and he's saying, oh, I'm going to be meeting your granddad soon, and then so as if he's going to kill himself. That's what it sounded like. And he also said, I hope you sleep well, you're all cunts. To his daughter.
Bloody hell, that's just mental.
So later, the police said that although those messages were clearly very threatening, so they are actually taking this as a threat this time, unfortunately, due to other kinds of competing demands that night, they didn't have a unit available right at that time to respond to the calls.
See, that's what's wrong with this country now. It's just that they just make all these cutbacks on the police force and stuff like that. And is it any wonder when, you know, people phone and need assistance, and then things like that end up not getting, you know, taken as an emergency because they just don't have the units to deploy, and they've got to obviously take priority over to, you know, if there's maybe an actual attack, or I don't know, a road accident, or, you know, maybe somebody has been murdered or something like that. It's just, and things like this, you know, might have prevented getting any worse if they'd just been able to send somebody out.
But well, nothing actually happened that night, so it did turn out okay that night.
Well, because it's a true crime podcast, I'm sure it's not going to turn out okay at some point.
No, but they must have been absolutely terrified the whole night. I mean, like, wondering if Kieran was going to break into either of the houses and hurt them, knowing that they had no one, because they knew that the police weren't coming, so they didn't even have that hope. So imagine that, thinking that you're going to could potentially be harmed, knowing that nobody's coming to help you. That must have been absolutely terrifying.
That's horrible.
So the following day, the 13th of March 2018, Matilda woke up at her friend's house. So she'd obviously, I'm assuming, not known anything about this, because I'm assuming they didn't let her know what was going on. You know, she's at her friend's house, she's safe. So she woke up to a text from Kieran, and it said, I love you no matter what they say. And she said that she didn't reply because she was just so angry with him because everything that had been going on. And at 7:29 that morning, the case was risk assessed, and it was declared that this was now a medium risk rather than high, because the night before it had been a high risk because there was a potential threat at the time, although the police couldn't get out. But because it was now the morning, nothing's happened, so this is now a medium risk. So medium risk cases are where there is still a potential risk of serious harm, but that risk might not be imminent. So that's what they're saying. You know, there might be some danger there, but he's not going to do anything right now.
Oh, well, that's all right then. So we'll just leave him to it until he does. I mean,
so in the notes on the police computer, it said that the suspect does not appear to have accepted the relationship is over, and they were just treating it as a messy breakup. That's what was actually on the notes. Messy breakup.
Wow.
So Kieran was still outside Nan Jennifer's house, and he waited for Molly to leave. He would have known that Susan would go round that day because I think quite often she left her dogs with her mum. I don't know, maybe while she was working or something, her mum looked after the dogs. I'm not sure why, but for whatever reason, he knew that she was going to be there.
Yeah.
And that morning, Susan would have went anyway because, like, obviously with what had happened the night before, she wanted to go and check on her mum and make sure that she was all right.
Of course.
Because obviously the dog been scared the night before. So Susan went round. She put the kettle on to make some coffee, and she told her mum, she was like, right, we're not going to let him bully us anymore. He's not going to control our lives.
Yeah.
I've had enough.
We're going to take a stand.
Yeah, exactly. So Jennifer went out into the garden, I think, to let the dog out. Or dogs, I'm not sure. I think she had a dog as well. Anyway, she went out into the garden. And Susan was just, like, watching her out the window. And she was smiling because she thought it was funny that her mum was talking to the dog. Like, do you do that? I do that. Yeah. I talk to her all the time.
Yeah, always.
I speak to her more than anybody else.
Yeah, I know. I do, definitely.
So she was like, oh, like, that's funny. She's talking to the dog. So Susan phoned the man that Kieran was currently working for. She must have known him or something, to see if he knew where he was. Because obviously after last night, she wants him arrested. She wants to know where he is.
Exactly.
When all of a sudden she heard screaming coming from the garden. So she looked up to see Kieran running at her mum with a knife in one hand and a can of petrol in the other.
Oh my God.
He was screaming and swearing, and he threw liquid in Jennifer's face. So she was like covered. I think she was like sort of down on her knees, and she was like screaming and begging for her life. And he poured the petrol all over her. So this is his mother-in-law.
Oh my God.
The 72-year-old mother-in-law. He's pouring petrol all over her. And then he poured petrol over himself, took a lighter out and ignited it. They both went up in flames.
Oh my God. So
Susan ran out of the house because she didn't want to run towards him because they were on fire. He had a knife. Even though he was on fire, he still had a knife. So she's like, ran the other way, called the police. And there is actually, it's been made public, the recording. So you can imagine it was horrendous. So she ran down the street screaming for help, on the phone to 999. She was screaming that he'd killed her mum and that her mum was on fire. She was crying and screaming, "You fucking bastard!" And as I said, it was really upsetting to hear it. She actually went back to the house. She went into the garden, even though the operator was like, "No, don't go into the garden." But she was like, "I have to get to my mum." And the operator's like, "Is your mum okay?" And Susan screamed, "No, she's burnt to a fucking cinder. Just get a fucking ambulance here, for God's sake." And Susan realised, because at first she thought that she was dead, but Susan realised that Jennifer was breathing. So she was like, "I love you, Mum. You're my best friend. Like, just hold on. Like, I love you. And Jennifer managed to speak, and she told Susan how much she loved her and how much she loved the girls and that they were her world, but she was going to go and be with her dad, her husband. She's like, "I'm okay. I'm going to be with Dad now." And the operator was like, "What's happening with Kieran?" And Susan was like, "He's burning to death in the corner of the garden."
I can give two hoots.
She said that he was red raw and he was gasping for breath, and it was just horrific. It turned out that he had 97% burns and he died at the hospital.
Right.
So 72-year-old Jennifer Cronin survived for 17 days, but unfortunately she died with her family around her on the 30th of March 2018. So Matilda said, "My nan was just like a bright, bubbly woman, always the most glamorous woman in the room. If the police had actually done their job, my nan would still be here. I just don't get what went so wrong." So an inquest found 5 different areas of police failings contributed to Jennifer's death. Detective Superintendent Stephen Jennings was not directly involved in this case, but he now leads the Essex Police on stalking and harassment. And he's apologised to the family on behalf of the Essex Police. And an independent office for police conduct investigation found no case to answer for police misconduct, but a number of officers were given management action. So Essex Police have increased training in recognising and assessing domestic violence and stalking. And stalking is a precursor to murder in 94% of cases.
Well, exactly. That's it.
So they're doing something about it now, but it's just so awful that it takes this for them to do something about it.
I know. I mean, I know the police are under a lot of strain because I say that there's just so many cutbacks with the police force in the UK over the last few years. It's unbelievable. So I know resources probably aren't where they would like it to be, but at the same time, I mean, this poor family have been harassed and stalked, and they've contacted the police multiple occasions, to say like what's going on with him and what he's doing. So, they should have been doing a better job of arresting him.
Well, he had been breaking his bail conditions constantly.
Well, exactly.
So
what's the point of setting a bail condition to let somebody break it and them not to have any repercussion from that? Because that's what it seems like. It's like he's like, oh, well, they're not doing anything to me. Like, I'm not getting arrested. I'm not getting, nothing's happening. I can just carry on doing what I'm doing because they're not going to do anything. I mean, that's not the message you want to send out to these people because, sadly, there's going to be many other cases where people are stalked and harassed from like exes or whatever's happened, and people are just going to think, yeah, well, they can set me these bail conditions, but it doesn't matter because they clearly aren't going to be bothered. I'm just going to carry on doing it, and I don't know. Every case maybe will lead to a horrific murder like this, but
I don't know, 94%.
I mean, I suppose that's quite a lot, isn't it? But
yeah, exactly. It's
like terrible.
So basically, only 6% of cases are where the stalking doesn't lead to murder, where people are just stalked and that's it. 94% this leads to murder. That is a lot. And I think 2018 is when this happened, and it's like only now they're getting more training. Like, we've had other cases. There'll be multiple other cases. One that jumps to mind is Molly McLaren.
Yes.
When she got stalked by her ex and he murdered.
Outside the gym, wasn't it?
Yeah.
At the gym
and they were like, oh, we're giving more training and stuff. And like, well, why is it taking so long? I mean, because stalking wasn't actually an offence until quite recently.
Honestly, I mean, I know, it might not eradicate and help the police prevent every case, unfortunately, because there's just so many. But even if it just helps, them able to prevent a lot more than get that percentage down.
Yeah.
That percentage is way too high. Like, I mean, the fact that it's a percentage at all is atrocious, but I'm also realistic and know that it is probably impossible for them to maybe prevent every single one. I mean, I'm sure they wish they could. But I mean, that percentage is way too high, so there must be more they can do to get that down. But that is horrific, and I mean, I bet that poor Jennifer, what a horrible way to go.
Oh, horrible way to die.
And I mean, her daughter, she's going to be feeling so guilty for that, I bet, as well, because that was her ex-husband.
I know, and basically he did it to get to her.
Yeah.
But what I feel most for the kids, because the kids are like, well, that's my dad. I loved my dad. No matter what he did, I love my dad. And then he's killed my nan and himself. Yeah. So like, they're going to be in therapy, definitely, because to deal with something like that.
I don't think you would get over that. I mean, hopefully they've been able to, get some help and actually, so that they can continue with their lives now. But I mean, I'm sure that's never going to leave their thoughts. Really. So
it's awful. I mean, it's awful terrible for the whole family. So thank you to everybody for listening to our first episode of season 9, and we'll see you next week.
All right, bye.
Bye.